Intention, we want to focus on production at the expense of all else has been a constant to the law by policymakers, lobbyists, and agricultural scientists. Technology is the primary mode by which the goals are achieved. The economic decision-making rationale towards farming cannot be divorced from a broader and complete faith in technology. Top 75 is ag scientific inherent values of farming, say production, politically is ag scientific, socialized academic, two academic decision came out of Russian academic values of production, career, practice, to a scientific pulse paradigm is chapter of the emergence of production, side production, weak state, unpredictable substance, positive science, source, economic, utilitarian reports, to rehab being the technology, to have region the technology by farmers for heavily second, cyber, medical, from serious policymakers, scholars, raw lights, parents, to rationalize the construction of policy that institutionalize these production beef, the document political care guys, by general comments of production beef, enhancing agricultural science, this economic and technological decision making is left us trapped in a technological labyrinth. Plants and animals, which are living things, are treated as worthless beyond instrumental arguments. The behind claims of beneficial economics are a serious ethical deficit that we should interrogate Truman to. At least I difficult and bring that self-consistent country goes back to and attempt to investigate cases rather than going to the root of the problem. And this results in creating one talk for other people, technological labyrinth. People living self-sentence. Some more questions regarding the origin, motive, size, things are good, punctually increasing the difference between back original reality and telling other motives. This various are those who control technological dance, economic self-interest, as well as growing consumption, no attention given to ecological values themselves, and this is all really cannot be reached against by environmental technology applied by subsequent development to step taken with the framework of the pillars of climate, cycling, economic self-sufficiency, everything is merely instrumental value, placing no more in the lighter material benefit to humans through science and technology, part of push option method that's the love in itself, intervalue, sentience, it's clear that our one with the animals determined by the technological model itself. And this effectively defective mode of decision making grows and spreads out to our treatment of agriculture, the expectation of constant progress mastering the earth, as well as industrial farming, is the ground upon which our psyche interacts at large class. We want to master to kind of feel instrumental rationale, technical topic is instrument to meet some obligation of nature, and rationale that produces nature to a mechanical process. This outlook represents the root of the extension of the problem that I call technicism rather than problem technical. Then also there are relatable technological solutions that many activities being comes reduced to autonomous rationality, to an ideology, technology, techniques, and alternative control of all reality, and as imagination is figure of the future, you solve all problems, and including problems, climate techniques, and guarantee abundance, and control progress. Rationality is calculus, known as utilitarianism. Also, cables are an example of this technicism that undergirds status quo decision making, manufactured risk, and ethical dangers. Side effects of technical systems are ignored because of industry arguments about external risks such as capital business costs, the claims of expertise of technology. Only by ignoring economic arguments can we forge a new direction for our master too. Getting surveyed social works for type risks is external indicators supposed to be honest, cyclical economic fluctuation, capital guidance for one, illustration the second types manufacture, return better by product, then technological systems, illustrating additional disaster concerns, or better by the fact that technologies and products are developed and disseminated through a for product decision making matrix that does not cause some negative externalities with regard to the industry reaction, social risk, calculations, both of economic solution rates, including policy position, industry interviews, where saying that farmers must protect the industry of production against manufactured risk accidents to routine themselves from goods made in ways that are not unforeseen. Cable production systems are a good illustration of how new technology may pose increased social hazard. Catch-up potential was evident when ways shipping goods were reached by Hurricane Floyd. Normal accidents play a technically problematic system before the regulated technological paths should be substituted. Dealing with these risks becomes a pressing concern for our government. 21st century politics is focused on more of such problems than on traditional economic security concerns. Additionally, because our misuse of technology is happening, science misuse and economic misuse are also inevitable. We are headed towards planetary catastrophe. Our claim is not that we should reject all technology and capitalism. Rather, they are inevitable parts of our lives. In fact, necessary for survival. Rather, we should use technology and economics as a means of an end to sustainability. By doing so, we can create the momentum necessary to change the world. Atkinson 1. The systems that support life-bringing systematic beginning to sway our science, technology, and economy are contributing to this humanity is seriously entranced by its own overwhelmed by the problems caused by progress, continuing to steer itself over a cliff. Projects or technology require stability may must be able to contain the activities of evil or also be unethical elements or studies do not take care of the content of life, unleashing those dangerous creations. Like we are committed to the technology future. Any slip could do our citizens themselves in a new sense of spirituality and increase sacred that same use of the site of Western technology compared to we need a common sense of higher purpose and experience and uplift. They must greatly enhance technological capacity while simultaneously changing most of our technological system on our systems so that we can know it will cause no harm to people in the natural world right now or in the future. The politics faces severely comprehension and action, including financial, political, psychological disincentive, denial, or avoidance has been still in response to warnings. These early decades of familiar are the decades of reckoning, dramatic change in the form of extremely tolerated innovation in the neosphere, conscious awareness and understanding of technosphere of physical practice necessary to rapid evolution of which mediate between neosphere and technosphere necessary as well. It happened with problem outcome, oscillation, current trajectories, convolution as well as collapse, accelerating decay of the fourth generation, two punctuating the worst episodes of crisis, results of devastating human ecological terms as well. Dramatic change is not difficult to imagine. We have to shape the ecosystem. We are doing these things very badly. Let's take responsibility seriously. If we despair collapse and cultivating the mission of search our powerful and wise stewards of our planetary home transformation become possible. Policy alternatives, innovations of all kinds, developed through thoughtful and common people committed by critical mass of business, government, and civil sector as well. To the solid prospect which we improve the mainstream by framing ambitious goals with highly dangerous interaction. This could inspire others to take change. Sustainability is dying, misused, and attached too many more initiatives that are failing to achieve strategic goals or even academic progress in that direction. Not because other nations have it, but because people pretend to be sustainable when they are demonstratively not itself. Carter continues, the industry globalization needs to be harnessed to have a noble set of goals and change aspiration, meet corporations, also governments, respect the shock of employment, economic globalization. As it turns out, the enormous power of market and corporation are truly sustainable direction. We will watch and also world changes for the better with unimaginable speed, transformational strike, and wishful thinking. Yeah, transformation begins precisely in wish and thought. Powerful wishes adding considerably to the global effort to bring down wall, changing capitalism at all costs, and more mindful capitalism conscious at all costs. This wishful thinking do consider what inspired acting to people accomplish job adaptation, new rules and ethics governing cultural process of two raising the standards of environmental performance sustainability will then be written directly into our cultural genes during global development. These memes will then be replicated. Sustainability will become business as usual itself. Plan. The United States federal government should eliminate nearly all of its subjects of contrary animal feeding operations. Connection to is choosing wisely. We have to move away from the current economic and technological mindset engendered by agricultural subsidies. We have to expose morally browse nature of current policies and not just about what we decide is how we decide. These things need to be attached to our decisions about agriculture and are important in creating societal values. In order to say question rights whether continue to launch money tax and standard technology we right on the basis of agriculture waste we made the answer problematic. However, issues tested each and technological origin problem creates new social problems, local limits itself, policymakers, short-term choices been production profit over the long-term stewardship of environment, communities, not just adequate attached meanings to those actions, such as regarding the agricultural constructive values and actions, please, by the citizenry, communities, not just provide the stimulus for define the situation and action results can have actions for what they are, fighting inside more norms to change the how, creating change to flow and agricultural or as agriculture or before policy comes meets within rather than in itself. But this might seem to see all policymakers can treat to make the choice treat the soil not simply pressure to start the sociological adaptations or workplace individual alternatives and city policymakers make ethical choices, sociologists make ethics explicit, contributing to the preservation of America's land. Also, technologizing has led us to forget that we're dealing with living things that we should treat them as such. Politics are revenue for action, fitness, critical development, and statistical, technological, and economic rationality, political actions, on justice, would put the brakes on, technological thinking, and solve Sherman 2. In industrial agricultural ability technology increase practically the farmation, new overfertilization, pollution, soil loss, biodiversity, future world areas, agricultural dynamics, even using and organic agriculture, different scientific, technological control, has been divorced from black blending, cultural kinds, and biological and agricultural people want to prevent the relation with nature themselves. Reality, though, teaches us that economic power favors and strengthens techniques and technization. Many people look toward politics and but materialistic politics strengthens the same process, but involving politics in the right way to place the realms of legitimate for any state to serve everyone. And the state has the power to restrict economic enterprise. Politics must focus on law as well as public justice for rights will then be applied in the technician process. People can use their direct confer technology, ethical just actions, and judicially forces politics to only be effective provided it is grounded and based on law and public justice. Subsidies to capos are exactly the policy that we should reject. They are post-hoc environmental key measures that promote the expansion of industry and trade-off with sustainable ecological alternatives. Noble 7. Eco funding should limit to small operation rather than subsidizing competition given what agriculture capos prove to be infrastructure water pollution. 8. Caution handle the underrated expansion of the industry. The regulations Greek code first awarded the largest capable operators with the most fully time state operations. 22. 50% of eco funding reserved for capos can be an unfair advantage for small-scale, ecologically more friendly, sustainable farmers and ranchers. We do not claim that we should get rid of technology. Rather, our argument is that we should change our relationship with technology to prevent the rise of a purely technological mindset. This requires acting with the right motive and being prepared for struggle with how to reform our relationship with technology is never any cost. Sherman 2. Sustainability is not possible in the current technological world. People have to steer in the correct moral direction, the influence of the proper motive. The way it begins with acceptance of motives in which technology has to be practiced into the wisdom, conservation, contribution, nature intended. The present development results in the technicization of nature. Technological worldview causes disturbances from which it never creates self-switch to correct directions and never ending ethical mandate that it implies a struggle and excludes indolence. Also, the way we frame our policies matters. Politics is not just about conscious action, but also about the unconscious moral values which are created same through the framing of issues. To create a shift in cultural norms requires a ecological responsibility. It's necessary that we frame and justify our arguments and policies properly. Rockridge Institute 2007. Progressive political ideals begin with frames and self-post research assume the most logical level conscience, these unconscious best frame our conscious thought. These structures operate through the worlds we use to discuss politics, frame, shape our thinking, multiple levels, more values, but the principles, issue areas, synthetic policies, arguments, but just as much as well as the moral frames to do. And policy details often more the most effective political messages linked to issue areas, to policy, but to fundamental moral values themselves, conservatives, and more effective, there are more frame called discourse because comments may argue against present direct policy, but they use these words to put themselves in fundamental disadvantage. It's nearly impossible to persuasively forget a progressive policy using conservative languages as well as principles and frames. Beta, we're going to come to an example, freeze more charities and crime against many different words, frame the same issue itself. Those who want to shift political debate toward emphasis on responsibility, changing the moral values, will I say this should openly optimally frames matter in order to improve our political debate. And I want to okay. Don't worry about shit, sir.
Let's talk about this framework argument. I understand that the way we sort of frame our arguments kind of affects the way the policies are implemented. How would this affect, for example, a DISAD link? Can you argue that the way you framed your plan or endorsement of the plan kind of compromises the way the plan's implemented and the effects on how it's perceived?
Yeah.
So, like, you can say the plan is popular because you claim that you can persuade Congress that it's popular?
We wouldn't frame it like a link turn, that the plan would mean Congress would like it.
Right.
They might not,
Gotcha.
And our evidence says that conversation would be good.
Your advocates and evidence, you say, we should use technology and economics as a means to the end of sustainability. Can you give me an example of what this would be?
It means that when we use decision-making towards
I
agriculture.
understand the abstract, but can you give me a specific example of how technology would be deployed in a way that we know that its objective is sustainability?
Yeah, I was just explaining that. It means that when we make decisions, we would prioritize sustainability as well as the environment over economics. We would not subvert the interest of the environment over
I understand.
economics.
It seems like the way you're describing it is that the intention of the use of technology would have to be sustainability.
Right. Our evidence on the intention question is quite fabulous and says
Gotcha.
the intentions are what matters, and it says that we could use that in practice.
What card in your 1AC do you think makes a broader spillover claim? I mean, it seems like you read an impact card
like
based in...
3. Our Atkinson...
Can I just ask what the warrant is? Like, let's assume CAFO subsidies go away. Why would that stop the government from promoting this type of development ethic in other areas?
Right, our Atkinson evidence is very good. It says that when we use the correct motive to persuasively present our policy, that can sort of activate a citizenry and broadcast a message that the government as well as people should be more concerned now with sustainability over things like using technology for economic gains.
How many people really pay attention to what Congress justifies its
Our
action
Rockridge
with?
evidence indicates that people listen and pay attention. Our Atkinson
To
evidence...
CAFO's policy? Why would people that aren't even...
Our Atkinson evidence says that there's a growing interest in sustainability and says that the current sustainability efforts have failed because they're couched as being sustainable, but they're
let's think of like other sectors, the automotive sector, refineries, etc. Why would they care about CAFO's policies?
Why would they care?
Like other sectors that are also dependent on this logic and use of technology, why would they pay attention?
They would no longer be profitable in a world in which there's a citizenry that wants to focus on protecting the environment.
And our evidence makes a specific reason why CAFOs are key. They're pretending to be sustainable. They're getting the environmental...
No, I understand that.
program will not be sustainable. That kills the word sustainability ideas.
The auto industry doesn't say, we're sustainable, but then, we're not.
Even if you were to solve for the citizenry in the U.S., what about internationally?
What about internationally?
Yeah, I mean, your impact card obviously is specific.
The 1AC doesn't. I mean, the 1AC didn't answer your 1AC argument about the shift, obviously.
I mean, I'm just asking what the internal link is to your impact card, which is based on broader relationships, not just in the U.S.
I mean, our 1AC says that solving in the U.S. is important. If you read a shift argument, we'll probably read cards.
Well, not even a shift. There's obviously tech elsewhere now.
Well, if you read cards that tech...
I have to read cards saying there's tech internationally.
Yeah, sure.
Do we even have those cards?
And actually, you get that for
You press or you read?
Yeah. No,
you know, the next case.
How many?
8.
Did you take that framework?
I know, I wish I had done that with that. So, you know, we should
And it's just the case page.
that's very just, yeah,
case.
I like that. You have to be like that.
All the same.
So you're going to
Oh, yeah.
Way cheaper.
First off, I expect interpretation you have to specify HB standards when after the show, they can shift their agent change function left and 1C, but it's literal office 2 makes them not talk about top results is the side for that course back to Oxford Dictionary 5C. Lower for next most top Cali interpretation you have to do near all subsidies for all 10 areas and or still subject to all elements of the similar for nearly all just booth 94. Course whether face the law has the name of the required area and or French words requiring each of one of both formals and more strict interpretations for and or justifies the exist maker and all both and nearly all is at least 9% greater than anyone who use along the nearly all. These 9% more people less than one term one cross on nearly all subsidies for all areas. Standards limiting
Hundreds of tiny acts, a very combination of subsidies for pressure ability to bring the app together. Whereas strategy, detect values of voter jurisdiction, should be judged based on community intervention and stop any intervention advantage to be only tied to the effects of the claim the election claim advantage based on the ethical stance of the CC standards. One negative ground, each ever will counterplans is the question of how to assess the opportunity cost of plans distorted to makes an extra topical. Resolution doesn't call for individual action. That's an independent issue, so it's every cool and possible pair for D. The negative the damage is already done, something makes that condition which is worse now. Next off, Texas Supreme Court should hold cited in the U.S. legislation that's nearly all United States subsidy concentrated on the operations or a constitutional operation was combination of complex and limited subsidy operation to be solved the appropriately held. The subsidies were constitutional produced 2001, the agricultural justice and chief carrying agriculture parity. And the sales for gained by program investigation to constitute objective by memory. Production control the Supreme Court held the 80 was the constitutional use of the learning counterplan is like politics of rights without the Jewish freedom for electoral. His rights for the institutional rights for the naval courts. The issue of the political institution made independent courts. You bring also change courts, willing to shield and cover excuse persons. First implication of the overall act world. And more force legitimacy of the civil rights movement. And next up is politics. 8 point Tauscher appointments key to bridging the RWCTB to actually package deal includes about this politics for 18. Tauscher also has for the RWCTB those interested working for warfare people of real target following the assessment of force of ratification CTBT. This one our double turn CTB and RWA package deal in. They'll make it a safe nuclear term without testing only what's up one left or allowed to proceed with weapon modernization correctional strategic posture commission. In report appears to be sympathetic to you and the RW is to get engaged more with critical data. It's getting Republicans on board. Obama will not be able to get the CTB2 without support of Republicans. And the RW doesn't require testing, so it doesn't follow the CTB2. So handling 2008 Obama and he's disagreeing over RW data. He's clicks purpose RW plus then zero by CTB2 left to get a vote. And if his opposition presented from his defense secretary cases that are important to historical rules and warriors case station would reinforce that law makes not vote against the large because conservative value use to attack like Obama. Could get the next set of references that they should create political funding is needed. Political capitalist keto diplomacy, non-partisan approach creates war battles Campbell. In 2007, company contemporary North relations suspended presidency for history president for senators. Seymour Court explained progress for political objectives. Company play available to avoid messing senators and strong jobs there. For policy success, hot state poison. President's honeymoon period that across all issues, nature bliss, to war, manual partnership, and enforcement of the moderate nomination. Too much political capital, extended early administration for nomination to study each. Capital presidents will certainly need older to broker important deals with Congress and the plan. Kill political capital and new agrarian 2009 president only taking somebody's substitutes once a while to serve on political capital. This one arguments that will be a popular space prior to clear agriculture isn't one of them given that's part of the allows where you can make switching on agriculture and he has to be valid or two requesting his force for structural change agriculture team even if it has real populist worthy nature. A presidential election is a paper route with agriculture policy it's able to get elected for farm states to be more difficult legislation farmers without support from these states. If farm states senators takes on big agribusiness on these spend is both capital. The test ban is a moral imperative. Damage to future generations makes this not acceptable. As Barnaby says in 1994, the most worrying risk of future generations, particularly weapons of radiation induced genetic effects make damage often relates to the risk of future generation have not yet begun advanced study seriously coverage test tree. That means all nuclear testers in part of the they have begun the nuclear to weapons on people's health and the health of our generations can no longer be morally justified. Food prices. 8-point high food price will keep the Ukrainian economy strong now. Agriculture is overwhelmed loss by other industries. 2008, the economic analysts were creating considerable performance by mass rising targets for African weather conditions very well favorably. Ukraine is expected to come out of agriculture having an 80% share of GDP, crops boosting value growth. World food price crossing again another year of robust export growth. Thank cutting people subsidies dropped world food price in Tucson Citizen. 31708 said across 7% of all grain in the U.S. Fed apples capable of manufacturing MBs increasing the higher price takes. 25 pounds of grain raised 1 pound of beef, which pays out the rate. Throughout food price under control and Ukrainian economic strength is key for national. The collapse impacts U.S. Russian nuclear war over Nico. 12.108 economic crisis will cause new forces of the national authority to take care of relative authority across Ukraine. Ukraine is able to stabilize or enable some state divisions. Washington is considered prior to the Eastern Forever remains offers on the U.S. Federal giving Ukraine split as this will start counter Russia to read Russia on the war Ukraine on the other way. About Ukraine ready to lead to a world nuclear war. The entire country based on this collapse Ukraine. Distance themselves the state probably civil war with shape sense. That's supply forces economic that the objective is to restore the economy. Next counter text United States trade representative should often have the United States federal government eliminating nearly all the subsidies concentrated on feeding operations. If the Chinese national government Beijing agrees to military and to apply support for the government the United States government will agree with the government Beijing complies and China will say yes to such as dark relations as Navy support for people won't be building our Western pressure must constructively endless China current status for just what makes the funders in Netflix Chinese for the year what money China that's where the possibility of every option being known for what's from here China was going to West Korea also seriously happening never becomes slaughter his film West United States for China to country to be able to approach country with a traffic away people Chinese for some China South Korea and Europe that's what our oil China's military focus behind the black economic efforts together this has been done dealing with our declared admission to the 60 push it's been voting for China's quick proposals that China was allowed certain political work to trade representatives while after equal to China has significant interest in even modest changes to farm subsidies to make the export factor subsidies. That's speech by applies part of the economic rape lever on mass slaughter, only with possible judgments equal self-interest will not find humanitarian solution. Next up is a moral technique that represents environmental control encourages anti-technological skepticism. This course support for new technologies used in 2006 where someone used to hospital to buy technologies has shown which is back when you can list moral. All right, capital the alliance to technology capital left interest every generation re-engineering nature sense but not to equal to industrial activity on the planet. Counterculture attack costs and progresses. The little push in agricultural conservative techniques still trying to oppression and electric trends. This is construction by begin kept down the imaginative and pull them for actual culture ultimately be a progressive faith industrialized. It's like secular liberal democracy where facts created national sides, the check enthusiasm and local display of progressive. Let us mission about the corporate consumerist machine activists. By the machine and this academic discourse undermines both faith and science and crushing innovations. Raw to this and their philosophical reasons design anti-sense movement forward thinkers who show their correct and left ones and heavily spoken plus when they go over the general number of the culture of science, this issue damage the perfect reasons to rational such operation the reason rational and deep under created with the efforts and opportunity to explain the world superstition make over take over with serious efforts to back society societies were persuaded that rationality can be dispensed with and can do immense harm in the sense philosophical and in the sense perhaps most dangerous of all. Nature sucks and it's constantly trying to kill us. We should forget harmony with the earth and use technology to transcend humanity to a better future as Steve Dallas. In 2008, Commission on this project must evolve beyond natural balance, limits, minds, nature, lives a little less, increase our quality of life, longevity, nature was committed. Countless crimes against humanity in place. These are poisons, plus past poisons, plants, nature, nature, creatures that suffer, starving. The inhabitant will continue to fight adapt nature using technology, intelligence, superstitious plan. Nature when we will win the battle against nature, we will not be humans anymore. We will be better than humans. Our top priority was to fight aging, but we'll have a world of opportunity to upgrade ourselves using genetic cybernetics and technology and transhumanist modifications, raise the change of human conditions, solve dehumanization through disease, aging, rape, and violence, fostering. Age does not cross the post-man sphere when the state being supposed to might be. Agree with other rich post-human that throw back post-structure organisms and nature gives us something poison, cancer, malaria, dementia, aging, starvation, unnecessary suffering, conflict, short control, month, press, 22 hours, as their crews are in. Nature, however, chose by disease, murder, rape, genocide, sheep, worship, racism, the horse, nature, well documented rather than farming. To natural order, legitimate forms of our nature according to the theory of human values, and personal aspiration, and the impact always all of us. Our understanding of the world is so limited that we can't even know what we should want without altering humanity as possible. Because our very value, we not currently know we want some values, putting certain forms of the story that feel fully appreciate the deliver capacity that we have to put those 2,000 and not so much for current students. Transcripts that are part of the state of who should propose human beings are human beings the right way. There can be to man able to realize our ideals better so our ideals may well look at some places most being are acceptable to the pure balance of the Constitution, and our alternative is to embrace democratic transhumanism. Every individual who endorses our project makes human survival more likely. Transhumanism is the best way to solve all problems of violence present in the future. As Boston in 2003 should we contract current problems rather than putting our efforts in planning the far future looks so like current host list our new challenges of the economy technology transhumanist discourse already reality about technology sensible research tracing technology research the other person designing groups make clear research and how the ethical lifespan we're working at intelligence application education to make communication with facility understanding extreme political totalitarian machines may find out hard to sense voice of dissent actually embrace full world character peace international cooperation respect human rights will also a bunch of the applications for the future technology can be control also reverse your research transfer military armaments so which for that be virtual improving position of the board most efficient way to make the world better by participating in the transhumanist process stage in our humanities entire future may depend on how we manage to become technological transition to human one extra person can make a significant difference case. The inherent quality of all beings require utilitarianism to this Comiskey 96. I felt like I do that. I can't do that to those in need for their right field of objective events, not questions the person and bear. Cost of solution of overall the questions that whether someone's supposed to be. It's given cost of sake of the person. They can choose person that way, so that respect to identify he or she. Is that person that's the only one like he or she, otherwise they're not equally true of all those whom we not say through. Our failure to act by mistake, so the one who must pay the cost of the act until sufficient respect to take account. Many of those person each one's life will better cost for an action. If one truly believes that all life is equal, our prostitution involves maximum for the lives delivered as many rational means possible in order to avoid. Consequential consciousness just by age-centered constraints and tolerance as age-centered constraints require non-value-based rationale.
That argument is just that utilitarianism is good, correct?
Constant consequentialism.
Utilitarianism. Awesome. Ukraine just said, for you to win your impact that Russia would expand into Ukraine, that's contingent upon you winning that there's a Ukrainian civil war, correct? Yes or no?
No, that evidence says that Ukrainian economic collapse would give Russian incentive to...
Right, a Ukrainian economic collapse.
Yeah, it's
which would then give them incentive. It's contingent upon their economy collapsing.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Your Sudan counterplan, or first of all, what's the status of both counterplans and the critique?
They're all conditional.
3 are conditional. Okay, thank you. Why is China in Sudan?
They need oil.
They need oil.
Yeah.
So what does cutting $100 million of CAFO subsidies do that is more important than Chinese oil
that evidence is actually very good on this question. It indicates that if the United States Trade Representative were to offer subsidy cuts as an incentive, it would give China an economic incentive to reduce their presence in Africa because it would make their export market for...
Do you have evidence that they have CAFOs?
We didn't read that evidence in 1C, but yes, we do have it.
Your evidence says that China has a significant interest in even modest changes to U.S. ununderlined and EU underlined farm subsidies. Where's evidence that... Your evidence says the U.S. and the EU should both cut their subsidies.
Civil offer, they'd probably say yes to that too, but luckily we only offer the U.S. subsidy cuts.
It seems as though your evidence says they want changes in both
at the same time. No, it doesn't say both, it says either. Our evidence indicates that
it doesn't say the word either, actually.
Well, it does say U.S. or EU to
Okay. Supreme Court counterclaim. You rule these subsidies unconstitutional, and you read a card that these subsidies in the past were ruled unconstitutional.
We didn't read the Peterson card.
You just read this card?
We read the Peterson card.
Yeah, but this card says, that even tag says, the court previously held the subsidies were unconstitutional. Why was that overturned? The court said they were unconstitutional. Why did they come back?
Well, they ruled that the funding mechanism was unconstitutional. In 1936 and 1938 Agricultural Adjustment Acts, they used in-kind transfers.
I know what they did. Why did they come back?
Well, I just explained that they circumvented the decision by using...
Who circumvented the decision?
I think it was Congress that did it. The
Congress
difference between that and a counterplan is that the
Okay.
counterplan...
When I say circumvented the decision, it's not that they violated the ruling, because the ruling did not explicitly ban all subsidies. It used rationale to say that certain conditions in the AAA
but
were unconstitutional.
Congress still found a way to circumvent.
When I said by circumvent, they passed another piece of legislation that put them in compliance with the Butler decision. They modified the
Okay, but they did something. Okay, fair enough.
That's the point of the counterplan.
CTBT. Yeah, your evidence says that. Do you have any evidence that Obama's spending capital on the Tosher appointment now?
I don't think you read the evidence.
Okay, so who is Tosher? And what are they going to be
Her name
confirmed
is
for?
Ellen Tauscher. She's being confirmed for the Undersecretary of Arms Control.
Okay, so where's your card that says that Obama will push the RW CTBT package? 7 says that Tosher will do that.
Well, it's not really contingent on Obama passing the CTBT package. Our evidence indicates that if Tauscher would be appointed, she would tie the RRW passage to CTBT, which would get Gates' support. This piece of evidence here says that if Gates were to support it, then the
Understood.
Republicans would get on board.
That makes more well.
Just a question. What's the author of the unique assessment?
Yes, please. Can someone? Here.
I got it.
You got it. Thanks. Okay, good.
The author of the unique assessment of the CTP.
Salix 318 and Hamlin 2005.
All right, cool. All right, I'm ready. What? 5. Sure. Cool. It's going to be A-spec, then running mark card, then the other top county argument, all subsidies. Then the base. The quartz counterclaim. The Sudan counterclaim. The post-humanism case. And politics. Ukraine before politics.
Where's ASPEC?
First.
And then cases after
Yeah.
the T.
You want to flip this one? Okay. Good.
Counterinterpretation specifies as far as the resolution influence or normal means to toss their standards because the negative general links to competition by reading evidence about normal means that they really care so much about agent faith they should be responsible for research in the process that also shows infinite regression under their interpretation the negative has to specify an evidence for them to specify agent not ground in literature either which would be worse for the faith they also short resolution focus again they make the debate about agent totally leads to generic strategies and shorts the educational function of the topic every year agent counterplans are voted issue for that reason we guarantee enforcement they have no right to specific ground evaluate this on reasonability don't allow the negative to arbitrarily raise the bar when they're not interpretation of the topic their framework argument
We meet resolved.
we may resolve, we're obviously resolved to take specific concrete action, all of the framework. We defend the entire plan. We'll never go for anything enforcement. That means we don't limit counter-interpretation, directs, or justification for policy, which is part of policy. The judge is the agricultural policymaker. What justification they use to decide their arguments matters. It's good because it's more real world, and people do not do things for no reason. Plans can't possibly be evaluated in a vacuum. That's the reason we read advantage in the first place, and also increasing their ground by giving them more links to politics, disadvantage, allowing them to run representation cases, etc. It's also key education. Our Rockbridge Institute, our Schumacher evidence says that this is the key internal link to improving and making politics better. Literature also checks abuse. How we justify policy is essential to both agriculture and CAPOs. Reward us for having done research on this. I'll evaluate this on reasonability as well. Extra topicality, if we are extra topical, would increase ground and counterplans to solve it anyway. They're nearly all arguments. We make this argument, read the resolution. We eliminate nearly all subsidies for CAPO, but they move forward in the resolution. Counter-interpretation 4 intended to belong to or use in connection with as an equipment for the army or a closet for the dishes. That's dictionary.com. We eliminate CAPO's ability to get subsidies. Their law must be changed for all argument ignores the fact they don't have to be for a specific commodity because the commodities are separated by commas. Their interpretation is ungrammatical, which means our interpretation is best because grammatical precision is key to predictability. They will also justify extra topical plans in which you have to eliminate the money itself. Firms can get rid of ECIP programs, which get rid of any ECIP program which isn't researchable or debatable, get rid of any subsidy which also isn't researchable or debatable. They also mean there's only one affirmative on the topic which destroys affirmative flexibility. Given that the F has been fucked in terms of win-loss ratio the last few years, you should allow it. Case. I'll point out a few concessions first. First, they concede our terminal level of impact. The Act and evidence gives multiple warrants for why extinction is occurring in the status quo because of our relationship to the environment, which means that all of their impacts are subsets of our impacts because the world will be destroyed right now. They also concede our solvency contention that we would create a larger broadcasting movement that would enable us to redress these problems and monkey wrench and throw a derailment of the process of technicism that exists in the status quo, which means we solve for the entirety of our impact, which will lead to rapid and broad-based social change and short circuits the internal links to any of their disadvantages. It also means they're fighting an uphill battle because we have an extinction impact which we solve. Their utility arguments, we agree you should evaluate consequences. The question is which consequences the affirmative impacts are structural and ongoing. They are endemic or manufactured risk impacts according to our Burmeister evidence. They should be preferred to the negatives, future, conjectural, or social risk impacts for a couple of reasons. First, specificity. The entire 1AC advantage is about short-term incidental focus. The wrong way to make decisions about agriculture. Their generic theoretical evidence should be discarded in favor of our specific practical analysis. Second, inevitability. The way we currently decide agricultural questions will not only destroy the environment as well as extinction. Prefer the scope of our impact and address it first because it's a structural issue. Courts. First argument is the framing disadvantage. It doesn't matter if the counterplan gets rid of CAFOs. They've conceded that the only question is whether or not we can create a movement against technicism. More generally, creating that movement depends entirely on the way we justify and motivate our action. The public's perception of that. That's our Rockbridge Institute evidence. They can't solve because the way they justify the counterplan or want to see is a criticism of short-term instrumental decision making. They are a short-term instrumental decision. We have 4 links to this argument. The first is the confrontation link. Our Atkinson evidence says we cannot have denial or avoidance anymore. Their attempt to avoid a politics link and avoid pissing people off proves that their politics lacks sting. The second link is the risk capitalist argument. They rely on social risk rather than the endemic risk. That's the plan on the case. The third link is the justification link. They justify it based off of international treaties, which is explicitly flagged in our Miller evidence as something we shouldn't justify agricultural policy about. It should be about the environment. The fourth link is the single issue focus. They think that CAPOs are important. We think that the entirety of ethics are important. They also don't solve our framing arguments because they rule on constitutional grounds. Also, perm to the counterplan. Counterplan has to be textually functionally competitive. They can't compete off normal means of life. And they to have one center not vote for the average kills affirmative grounds. Counterplan sales proves the plan text is true, and also in the context of the court eliminating just means shifting money, which proves that this is a topical interpretation of plan. Shanahan 95 the court's not construed the term eliminated generally in the court's view. It's an optional form of benefits distribution form. Change and elimination of that form creates a different form to eliminate the prior form of benefit. Also, agent counterplans suck. They steal the affirmative, ignore the resolution. They increase ground in education. There's infinite possibilities of agent counterplans, which is a voting issue. Also, Congress would override if the politics such as Drew Brigg mentioned them. Congress is wrong to sometimes challenged by the U.S. Supreme Court when the court benefits to reflect the policy in which conflicts congressional preferences culminated in Congress overriding the court's decision. Congress will introduce legislation to overturn Supreme Court decisions. Also, permutation to both provides double solvency. Also, conditionality means I don't know what the 2R is going to be. I can't structure my 2AC for the 2R kills 2AC's time and strategy. Education prevents in-depth education, forces contradictory arguments, which is the voting issue. Also, no international perception to allow to the 2 might still be supposed to courts enforcing international legal norms, but the autonomy courts may seem exotic and hard to imagine in the world, especially in authoritarian regimes. Also, Obama will comment on court decisions. Republicans Evans will use spin to attack him politically. This brings Capital Calabrese and idea. Calabrese able when the Supreme Court issues rulings. Obama reaction shows his carefully movements that the Supreme Court ruled in the death penalty was unconstitutional. Obama siding with hardline majority. The majority opinion knocking down the ban on handguns. Obama said, I identify with the need to save the children from Senator Brown back selling. Obama's gun control statement, incredible flip-flopping. Politicians are always happy to get a chance to accuse opponents of flip-flopping. Whether Obama's new centrist genius as a result of flip-flopping the Supreme Court decision to focus attention on Obama's run to the Senate surely won't stop conservatives from using the specter of Democratic appointment in Congress to try to rally support. Sudan. No escalation. No one in Africa has nukes and major powers. Won't give a shit is proved by Somalia in the 1990s and zero-low instability. Also, permutation do both. Also, conditioning counterplans or a voter. Jacks all affirmative ground. We can't live with the plan's offense. Potential upon the 8 ball and the 2 exceeds. Unpredictable to take the possible conditions with low Judge Evans standards and turns their testing arguments counter-interpretation. They get any counterplan that doesn't include the possibility of doing the entire plan, which means perm do the counterplan is justified. Counterplan should be textually falsely. I've explained that argument on the other fold. Limiting intrinsic terms are okay against a counterplan that competes entirely based off normal means and arms key to China oil. That's the reason why they say no means the plan is to drop in the bucket. H or F into the China arms sales to cartoon provide incentive to keep giving China preferential access to its oil. Beijing used our base forces, Sweden oil extraction deals, having spent millions of dollars to build Sudan's energy infrastructure. China has a lot to lose. Okay. We don't decrease support for technology. We explicitly say in our advocates and evidence that technology is good. It's a question for the motives of technology. We agree that nature sucks and that we should control it. We agree that we should be manipulated for the better. Again, this is explicit in our argument. We say we have to reform the news sphere in order to use technology more effectively and in the name of the environment, which means the status quo deployment of technology means that it can't possibly solve the impacts because it will always destroy the environment because it is in the name of production. That's our Thompson evidence is deployed incorrectly. We will lead to a correct deployment based off their concession of our solvency evidence, which means we would solve the entirety of their impacts. Permutation do the plan and embrace transhumanism. The alternative doesn't solve because it doesn't give a praxis as per our access and evidence to praxis as per our access and evidence to redress the forms of technicism that exist in the status quo. Post-humanism will be manipulated by profit motives, which means they can't solve. That's all I need. Ukraine. You should have had crisis arguments. It's a social risk question. That's Burmeister. That's on the other flow. The link time frame is also slow. We lead to social change and movement, not an immediate flow of the market, gradual flow, which takes out the internal link. This also links to all the counterplans. There's not a chance that this outweighs the conceded case impacts. Also, you can't make these sort of economic predictions. The New Yorker 2005 title, I think 284 people made the limit comment on offered by some political and active insurance by the end of the X from May 8, 2003. Since one forecast response with the probability of alternative outcomes results were unimpressive. Experts perform worse than they would have been simply not an equal probability of all outcomes. Human beings who spend their lifetime in state of the world of poor forecasters, the dart throwing monkeys who would have distributed their picks evenly, and also Ukraine won't collapse. Their economy is fine and status quo. All right, politics. First, it won't pass. Isaac's 317, only 3 Senate Republicans programming supports team Sparks, right compared to the House Republican unity to opposition day. In part, reason order got a 67 votes. Democrats will need 8 to 10 GOP votes. The barrier is tremendous. It probably will move the most burdensome steps to ratify the CTPT1 of the into the CTPT fees and even more major period killed. And session made it clear that our opposition has a lesson. Ratification could be delayed until more favorable conditions burns. Also, do the plan and ratify the CTPT. Also, capital is low and declining now. Mercury News 316. Obama's ability to block executive bonus. AID Delta Sharp will administration threatening to derail support for his agenda. Also, no spillover. Loss of capital as farmers wouldn't impact foreign policy parts of the topic. Also, term family farmers. The Adonis 2008 family farms got out of the capital close concentrated video operation. Strongly oppose any type of subsidized pay for corporate welfare at the expense of family farmers. Taxpayers just plain wrong. Their key rule 2000 farms possess power because most family-owned few politicians can escape pressure from farm constituencies. Also, McCain votes at these key. Fox News 86. McCain opposes subsidies for farm bill. It's something America simply can't afford.
Just to be clear, the New Yorker evidence about predictions, is this only relative to or relevant to economic questions?
No, it's relevant to political questions as well, so it would probably apply to all your DAs.
Okay. I assume your 1AC evidence, your 1AC has arguments about how the public perceive the way that your movement or argument happens, right?
If you're asking if this argument links to us too, it certainly
No, I'm not talking about predictions argument anymore. I'm just asking a question.
All right, so
Your 1AC makes an argument about how the public perceive your app, right?
Yeah.
What is that? How would they perceive it?
they would perceive it as a repudiation of a profit-based motive for technology and a call for sustainable technology.
And that's based only on the question of repealing or reversing the production trend, right?
Reversing the production. I'm not sure entirely what you mean by that. Argument isn't that production is bad. Argument is that production isn't the obsession with production at the expense of all else. Obsession with economic justification for doing things as opposed to environmental justification for doing things.
And that's
probably bad.
What you just said is the internal link to the way that the public perceive your app. Is that correct? Okay. There are rule evidence from 2000 about why family farms are key to the farm lobby's political influence. Farms possess power because most are family-owned. Few politicians escape pressure from farm constituencies. This evidence says that they're like powerful and within their own particular subset. Why does that spill over to the CTPT or Tauscher appointment, which is actually our controlling this?
Why does your link spill over to the CTBT?
Well, that's a good question. Our UNT link evidence says that he has a finite amount of political capital and he hasn't invested any in agriculture, and investing in agriculture would destroy what's left.
Our evidence says that wouldn't actually destroy political capital because that's a pretty popular thing to do with farmers.
Government say political capital.
The first argument says they have immense amounts of political power, so why would he have to
Your
expend?
evidence says capital with an O as in like the building in Washington.
I understand. We don't say it says the words political capital, no, but he wouldn't have to expend political capital if the plan is massively popular with the only people.
You don't have any arguments why Tauscher won't be appointed now, right?
No, not Tauscher-specific arguments. We have arguments about the CTBT, which is pretty damn good.
That's true. The argument why the CTBT won't pass now is because of GOP opposition. Our UNT unique evidence says that that's because Gates is not on board. You can see that Tauscher appointment gets Gates on board. You can see that Tauscher appointment is going to happen now. Why doesn't that answer your unique argument?
No. Our evidence kind of assumes those things. Our evidence about Gates says he could get 2 to 3 people on board. Our evidence says there are 8 to 10 GOP senators who would need to be swung. And the evidence also gives a couple other fantastic warrants as to why it can't possibly pass.
You think our evidence says that Gates can get 2 to 3 people on? Our evidence says that Republican opposition is unified against the CTBT because of Gates' opposition. This evidence just says that they oppose it.
Yeah, this says that there's still a cadre of individuals who don't like signing treaties.
Here's an underlying part of your card. To win approval, the Obama administration wants to cut some sort of deal with the Senate Republican leadership. Why isn't that our link argument?
Because, first of all, if
I
you
think
cut a
argument is
deal,
really
the plan would
descriptive.
affect the deal. You don't read any evidence that
The
would
deal is
the deal equal.
Is there any other parts of your politics besides that's Kane and Donald Trump? Oh, you're okay,
The Shanahan 95 card, what district court issued this rule?
Yeah.
I think it said the third.
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say anywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure.
good.
640.
What's diet ready?
It's like
Kroger soda.
Oh, okay.
it's
Well,
like
not Kroger. That's Big
It's
K.
more like tab. Yeah, it's like Big K. There's some of the people who do Big K. It's like no caffeine, no sodium, no calories. No Splenda instead of like aspartame. They had it in like 7 flavors.
It's too quiet. It's too quiet.
It's true.
Now we're getting attacked by crows.
Yeah, that's.
All right, A-spec, critique, the condition counterplan, the T argument, not the can't use reps argument, the other one, court's counterplan, and then case.
You know, one time.
Yeah, A-spec, K, the condition counterplan, T, courts, case. You also have that timer.
Yeah, here you go.
All right, ready?
They still concede their interpretation that we have to have a debate by normies and Wednesday counts on the other flow. As long as we win that, they have to eliminate using comps and polluters by the counts committed on the K. We're not going to go further. They can't generate any offices. Our argument was about the intention. Our original link argument was about the intention of sustainability being insufficient. However, we're not going to go for an anyways interpretation just to test competition. They decide to make this offensive execution laws. Your arguments at the bottom. Now, the condition cap, we're also not going to go for a Wednesday condition on the other flow. The reason why condition cap was about just the reason why the counterplan should be rejected. Now, why we should be voted against anyways, so only come down to conditionality. Anyways, what's going to work is just to test competition. The intrinsicness argument will be answered on the other flow, especially since they don't have an intrinsic argument at the core flow. The T over they have severely messed up our interpretation that gaps to eliminate new law subsidies among the 10 years. This means that if there were 100 subsidies spread across 10 crops and you load them at 90%, they have to cut 90 subsidies. Which subsidies they choose to come among the 10 years up to them? Cases that mean interpretation include Northwestern FW2 affirmative, which cuts it among five different areas for a big trade up, or a different affirmative that targets 5 different crops and argue you can solve things like soil erosion. Not enough to eliminate all the projection-based subsidies from all 10 areas. The first argument said they will eliminate new law. You only eliminate new law with one area. You have no counter definition of and or our evidence comes from a Supreme Court decision indicating this is how they accept it. Second, counterpart before we can concede this interpretation, you have to have a definition of and or evidence which subsumes the comma indicating whenever there is and or used before qualifier, i.e. nearly all. Everything in the list is
subjugated to that. They take all ignore because commodity specific is a common because of a grammar. We'll concede the grammar standard. You have no grammatical interpretation of it, so you have Terranars that they say that we extra tropical case specific equal false. Word first is no part of our interpretation of forces, especially since we say you learn 90%, so you probably have to start at 4. And here's an example of why they limit the topic. There are at least 30 categories of subsidies for cotton load, shopping 10 windows, 6 subsidies for cotton select on the cross. I've all become a multi-billion-dollar talking about at least 30 types of subsidies inside the farms, and there are hundreds of tax subsidies and direct capital insights who go through the report identified several hundred subsidies provided possibly because of agriculture tax, labor, loan, rooms, obligations, cash flow tax, primes over the value. You should live value limits over everything else. The H1, and it's critical to our ability to be able to predict the environment, generate things like case surface of beats. When it's critical to ground, even if we get generic links under their interpretation, we would simply get trials by link terms that are specific to the case. It's critical to our ability to get things like capital. Obviously, they say there is only one of our the time it falls. We give two examples of the yoga the case of the interpretation. Except jurisdiction of when my interpretation change, your judging jurisdiction vote negative way, so reasonability here because I'm assuming they're going to cross line with the other one versus that's very much reasonability in and of some unreasonable because of multiple reasonable interpretation. Second, it does not really come down to limits. If they allow 5 cases and we allow 4, you probably vote affirmative because they solve our interpretation. If we win, they compromise the limits to such a great extent that Bruce will only be able to access the impact of the court's counterclaim. First on the framing DA. First, the court can still use the same justification that the 1AC uses. No part of the no evidence of the 1AC indicates that the Congress is critical. Second, it's not about what we say here, it's about what they say there. Nobody pays attention to what we say in this room. However, the way that the Congress of the courts are framed is how actually the citizen is going to view. Third, we will concede the concession cross-examination when they say CAGFOs are uniquely critical because of the way they deploy technology, which means that we only have to access one of the soft mechanisms of the 1AC to be able to access the terminal pack. Now he makes this up point. He says first is denial. We will also access any of the other links. And second of all, this argument doesn't make any sense. It's not about avoiding political backlash because you don't want to piss off the Congress in general. It's about avoiding the political repercussions. But furthermore, it's not just about the political sense, it's about the social, i.e. the way the citizenry addresses it. If we win, that the citizenry goes around with the capital, we'd be able to solve. They say it's about things like risk calculus, how we answered on the other one, the predictions along with the case. They say the justifications international treaty involves the Butler decision had nothing to do with the international treaty. Even our evidence indicates it's about federal intervention. They say it's about single issue. Not if we debate that the Cabinet deploys the framing the same way you do, which means this argument doesn't make any sense. Second of all, we still saw with the K4 argument and the general framing argument. You did not ask us how the court's going to justify the counterclaim, at least in the world of the Cabinet. If you will defend that, they'll say and use whatever justification the Congress can use. They say from to the Cabinet, one eliminate means to completely remove or get rid of something Congress from the dictionary. 5 second subsidies, the requirement of provision of payments to farmers, not necessarily the payment of subsidy. Colleague 94 under U.S. law subsidies to finance grant includes domestic subsidy for product requirement of government action specific industry. A subsidy includes provision of capital. Is also considered a subsidy before it even gets to the farmer. 96 U.S. laws the definition includes only the benefits of government action and trust department, and you make a financial contribution according to the House Conference for subsidies for conforming to the government measure with these two. If you sort of about the Cabinet does not eliminate subsidies, trainers for 93 lost on the Constitution, the other 4 central, they found out Professor Gutler has pronounced the Attorney General's coming to the conclusion of persuasive declaration on constitutionality and does not operate as a repeal exception. Only Congress has the legal authority to officially eliminate time and approval. Second of all, 2, balance of legal authority change time limits to strongly demonstrate the Congress eliminated things like federal warfare. Their next argument is the reading piece of evidence indicating about shifting the funds. First is that the Cabinet does not shift funds, it actually leaves funds at the level of the agency. Second of all, your evidence team decide what court said this, which means it's not a reason to prefer their definition for our definition. Their definition would be bad because they justify the act, not even eliminating the statute, rather doing things that might counteract the benefits of the subsidy. For example, can they leave the subsidy on the book or try to limit or add another condition whether farmers would be able to receive it, which can still be viewed as a restriction. They say age of capital is bad, but one, this is not a generic age of capital. It competes with subsidy elimination. The Cabinet leaves the statute of the book, their interpretations contrived in order to exclude a certain genre of capital, the name most countable in our capital is not just the exact same thing, the absurdity of many interpretations. 32 equally predictable on this topic. Peters shows that there's a precedent for the court assembly changing congressional subsidies for specific education. Established the Cabinet educates us on alternately opposite subsidy for 5 doesn't seal. They have to have a defensive subsidy elimination of the process that goes with it. Anyways, the next argument is the Congress will override it. However, if we win that the agencies will enforce rules that don't actually get the subsidy, the loan the agencies would fall for all. 85 agencies that cut off all the court rules contend that only Supreme Court's decisions interpreting statutes are binding on agency and play agency will not be an opposite decision. The Supreme Court ignored a certain of the future education within the circuit, and if the Congress had a certain method, the court would just strike down the attempted circuit method. Remember 92 cases, such as child limit tax, so the court can see through a sham purpose of legislation. The opposite of circuit with the court's constitutional on this is showing the time the Congress appear not only in the debates but also on the basis of the SN. The markers will behind the scenes to show the true time behind a piece of legislation. The court may use by the Congress successful reversing court decision to committee's recess strike down the resulting act. And this proves that the Congress was better than the plain farmers will continue to propagate the K-4 industry in the world of the plan because they believe it's not permanent jobs. The 70 might take a decade for changes to be noticed because farmers hold on to existing projections. It's a kind of reversal from policy to the old subsidy form. That's what happened in the 2002 Farm Bill after break when the old command farmers 1996 Congress reversed direction, restoring the old and eliminated 1996. Remember, such reverse many farmers hold on to existing crop systems. This means that the capital solves better than Supreme Court decisions are seen as permanent but fallen away. Congress was the back so coming to Supreme Court direction course, came to the challenge of the political branch, of course, and especially as we go to be its final arguments, public will be on the stand to choose to challenge the Congress or the executive. The next argument is permutation to both one so it's possible both happen at the same time. So Congress can't say the court made them do two sequencing matters. Silence 95 Congress made the two factors by one side, the other one should have allowed the course to make a determination of the political branches in. Well, jump the problem of the course to convince the fact that the courts are political lighting rather than the precedent. Well, get blamed the rules of the court period 99. I also read a headline of public policy of the Congress side by the Congress, but they come up with a big story with the same policy the Supreme Court decides to address. The next time is going to be shouting one after the affirmative. We couldn't find either of the positions, so they have to have offense against what that is. Team top theorems and the things that Casey was making inevitable, and also if you don't go for theory, you get your time making theorems, critiques of impacts, language case, and impact frames like DRS, you to make your impact inevitable, for example, and after that, there's nothing compared to vote for the plan. However, they can also concede utilitarian something that read out on add-ons in the case and count up that can only be the positions we read. Can just what are responsible for the hypotheticals, multiple permutations, proves the necessity, multiple permutations to check different facets of the Calvin. We should be able to check different facets of the plan. Also, our interpretation far more predictable. Possibilities propose multiple alternatives to a specific policy. The proofs are our interpretations far more grounded and things like out of a possibility. They say no interaction perception, not true. Michelle, the Supreme Court decisions. Taking away the world view zero. The Supreme Court doesn't make possibility but the decision of the entire country inherent in the possible court is people that have a serious background possible. The court's been said about the world sort of representing the international community making laws. And I'm going to introduce the next argument is that the Republicans that use it to lead Obama's capital first. The evidence assumes Obama flip-flopping second. And opening up politics to prove that Obama will not going to come out and champion the issue of the Supreme Court decision because he wanted to distance himself because he wants to use his capital for the national. But it's also answered by Simon's evidence, fucking or O'Brien evidence. So the one to see. Case. We'll make a couple new analytics that you should probably let me want to argue to. First is you know something things like technology internationally. Second of all, your spillover evidence is not that good. Your evidence only presupposes that it would be good. And the citizen will latch on. Your evidence is not going to the fact that a lot of citizens even pay attention to things like national debates or that could actually change the way act. There are first terms that they're terminal back to extinction of the so first is empirical that doesn't even have a time frame. We have that this orientation technology will launch them. They actually have no specific scenarios to how this technology will affect us. And the terminal back to extinction is the same thing in CTP. Things like nuclear testing, for example, is an example of the way this technology is deployed. They say all of the dissident impacts are subsumed by the affirmative. The fact that we might lead to the same thing, i.e. extinction, does not mean that you subsume or terminal impact that you solve it. You have no argument as why you would jump. You would solve things like nuclear testing, especially since you have no specific evidence about how you affect things like defense elements. If we win that there's a security imperative to engage in things like nuclear tests in the world, where we don't right with CTBT proves our arguments. They say we haven't addressed all that technology solves all impacts. That's the answer about Senator Kaminsky evidence is just to answer the other argument about framing. If we win, then you're plainly saying negative political repercussions. You're now saying the first our evidence indicates that everyone should have equal value. So trying to prioritize the people that die, for example, at the altar of the problems with the orientation technology should not be privileged over other people that die, for example, things like nuclear testing. Second of all, they say which consequences matter. That's answered by Kaminsky evidence indicating that we have to look at the terminal ends. It's not that we can value certain deaths over others because of the way in which they died. Our evidence indicates that people feel pain equal to reason why we should prefer all people. They say the status quo does not has a short-term make me to prefer the status quo. This is compromised by the issue of the Calvin. The Calvin can rectify some of the status quo harms. The proofs why it's not that we're weighing long-term impacts over short-term impacts. It's that the long-term impacts are a tiebreaker because we solve for the same short-term impacts you do.
When you're reading all these arguments that Fern do the counter plan, do you read any court definitions of eliminate?
No.
Okay. Our court definition of eliminate said it's basically elimination, according to the court, is stopping the provision of.
That's not true. I'll give it to you actually.
Okay.
That evidence actually isn't really clear what eliminate means. It mentions eliminate in the first sentence, and then it goes on to make an argument about distribution in another sense. I don't think that's actually talking about what eliminate means. It's actually talking about different words and quotes.
It definitely is, but
we'll get more into that. I don't think so.
All right. We'll leave it then. The evidence you read says under U.S. law, subsidy is defined as a grant and includes subsidies if provided or required by government action. Why does that mean the counter plan is different than the plan?
Because the argument is that the provision of capital is the subsidy, not the tangible money itself. If the subsidy statute still exists, the provision still exists. It's just that the subsidy never reaches the farmer in the world of the counter plan.
Okay. All right. Your topicality argument, you make a claim that we allow an infinite number of cases. Our interpretation is that you have to eliminate nearly all subsidies for one of the particular commodities. Why does that mean we allow?
Well, first of all, your interpretation doesn't restrict the app to just one area. That goes back to the old argument of you not having a source to this interpretation.
Sure.
Second of all, the argument is that if you can do nearly all within any of the 10 areas, the multiple permutations within each area would be more than the multiple permutations of having to target everything at once.
Right, so I don't understand why that wouldn't just be 10 apps.
Well, no, because if you can do nearly all in a single area, there are different combinations of different subsidies within the 10
Right, but
areas.
not all those add up to 90%, or nearly all.
Well, that's
you
not
could
true.
put 90%
For example,
for
in the area of
cotton,
cotton, there are 30
cotton.
subsidies.
But
Now,
the payroll
which
is
subsidy?
very small for those.
Think of it this way:
So after
if you have to
that,
target 27 out of 3 or 27 out of 30 subsidies, which 3 you decide to leave out is up to you.
No. Those 27 subsidies would be small subsidies that the AF would have to definitionally cut to
I mean,
meet
that-
nearly all interpretation.
That begs the question of whether or not nearly all means it's the financial amount or the actual number of
Right, so if
subsidies.
we
it's
regard
right.
that nearly all is 90%, why does that not take out?
Like I said, you assume that the nearly all means the amount of money as opposed to the subsidy itself. For example, countercyclical payments or loan guarantees in the instance of cotton.
Right.
Our argument is that it's the subsidy itself. If there are 30 subsidies, the economic value of it is irrelevant.
Okay. The counterclaim text says the court would rule that these subsidies are unconstitutional, right?
Yeah.
How does ruling on constitutional grounds capture our framing arguments?
I mean,
Say
your
they would
argument is that
justify
the-
it for the same reasons, but your text is explicit that they would rule it unconstitutional.
Well, sure, but I mean, it doesn't mean that's the only thing they'll say in the role of the counterpoint. I asked you in cross-ex, what is required to create this social movement? You said the way we justify it, the way we talk about tech. We can defend that all happens in the role of the counterpoint.
You explicitly say it.
We've never explicitly said it.
Okay. It's going to be the food crisis DA, and then politics with ability.
The end of that what?
We'll continue framework class. We're not going through this analysis prediction argument here. First is in link to our impact our politics and testing some empirical group also. Prediction both level and necessarily the consequence of discriminating by 2 grades 994 consider not policymakers consummate prediction consequence of broadcast speed and against marks policymakers international intelligence shift through reason for information rights for the African rose by races off with emphasis that policymakers are under Northwest makes this ways off self-stage related to their work council help policymakers from the available facts and the available facts but the world invested in intelligence better debate on specific correction than to offhand disregard the 994 the other way to assessment to explore the reason agencies hold the specification right now I'll sure be expressing the policymakers will self-answer clearly indicate what agencies agree to know and not in other words responsible course to describe the various policy interpretation layout the evidence for this and prediction are useful even if they aren't absolutely accurate as mere shower you know once my head is so such a double prediction about the future average of the form policy different because it helps make sense and the best will be a robot plus disagree makes split forecast of those without sure views of further I just more trying to anticipate new events it's a good way to test social science theories the policy. This is not just a CTBT politics. This is our argument that Obama will travel to get Tauscher appointment. She will tie the RW to the CTBT as a package deal, which gets Gates on board because the opposition to the CTBT is that it doesn't include the RW, that he's critical of GOP support. You have conceded that Tauscher will be appointed now in the direction of the Lincoln structurally only go away. You've also conceded that Gates is critical of GOP support over CTBT, so you functionally can't win a linkter because the uniqueness to your linkter is not unique. And our argument indicates that only in which Gates is on board with the old Republicans and will Republicans support the way the case. The points of links your short-term critique on the case based the impact testing is a moral imperative because it causes genetic damage, destroys the environment, and harms future generations. Arguments that there's some probabilistic future nuclear war. It says testing has happened in the past and will happen in the future unless we're able to ratify the comprehensive test bench ready to this point. It's time for technological mastery or production technological mastery happen for a long time. But testing will happen in the short term. If the CTBT failed, that this there's literally no difference between probabilities both manufacturers studying. The only risk about waiting some time frame now the politics made proper versions that CTBT won't pass. This is not a non-unique argument. This is an answer to their link terms. It says the GOP opposition will block the CTBT from passing now. But our handling evidence indicates that they oppose because Gates is not on board. Their evidence concedes that Obama will need to cut a deal, which is what our link evidence is descriptive of indicates that the deal will be tying the RW to CTBT, which gets Gates on board and solves GOP opposition. I literally don't have to read any evidence of this because our 1 and 2 uniqueness evidence assumes that they make this intrinsic permutation. This permutation is illegitimate. The point the links to our just prove that there's an opportunity cost of the plan. Even if you could do both, it wouldn't actually happen in the real world. Real world permutation is illogical. Because when they technically ground, the only and truly dissatisfied after our impactors at first we'll be stuck in that impacting indefensible status quo grounded racism and your absence when politics are uniquely critical to describing subsidies are inherently political issue and the economy's already the economy's already in the shitter in trade. Deals already collapsed. They say political capitalists they say political capitalists will not first. Your evidence is not conclusive, just as there was some backlash on that causing also political capital. Also, our new agrarian evidence answers indicates that Obama set aside some political capital for unpopular issues, but agriculture was one of them. If he has to invest capital in agriculture, will destroy the rest of the agenda. Also, Obama's capital now, the media underestimates his potential as a black state. 315, the means question whether or not Obama can tackle too many major issues, the means of criminal education, the previous administration pressing walk away, and to go at the same time, Obama's not taking on things one theory, all the same problem, and he still has some political capital. No one can preach anyone. Nobody ever kind of about 168. Obama, civil self-first and favorability, his political capital. Let's tap. And one of the greatest political strategists of all time agrees with us is Karl Rove. In 319, not to give challenge when attention is back was nearly because of the White House. Obama's laws ever had especially to place capital. Obama retains much residual goodwill and chasing Silicon towards the recross down. This also answers the argument that there's no spillover because Karl Rove agrees with the political capital is fine. Also, it's on the brink fell with 31109. Obama's Lindsay's limited to next agenda. He gave middle class loans most job ratings are high. He has political capital to address the pandemic change, and pollsters agree. Wrong 37 polls show that most persons will make sure regardless of what the specific policy still may occur. Political capital suppose when it comes to slack to the long-term walls of polls during the research center and the AIG problem once you real Obama's capital down somewhere news for 1809. People think policy makers trying to get 2 months more around Obama's plans. They made sure that Wall Street Obama was quickly civilian and control of how companies use taxpayer dollars. AIG won't affect Obama probably 324. It's source before trying to imagine building this touchment that will leave left on the Malcolm America's real job also focused about largely in depth assault on Obama had to their corporate ties in the case of AIG. The fact that the Democrat tends to limit bonuses for corporate getting federal assistance. They say no spillover. I asked this argument about also one is link comes in case they only has a finite amount of political capital and that will cause them to spill the rest also. Capital is finite. It's Thompson Peak in 97. That's been controversial. This special capital still selling one plus state. Most of their pros, their race, political capital, and what amounts to an argument is family farm insurance. First, I want to see link up to that way in case that even if there's some support, there will be a net backlash. Part by the lobby officer Yermans only says 150 family farmers oppose capitalism, not that all of them do. You should view the link happens to have with high scrutiny. Also, the plenty of lightning round political backlash, putting subsidies in one sector caused the entire farm lobby to circle the wagons in opposition. That's editor in 2008. Obama Bush wanted subsidies, but now to form with the left-handed influential subsidies the other PCX lovers who supported the popular off the last which rule and large critical and difficult the arguments. You should love more NATO doesn't lie and lobby. We got to roll the agriculture community circle the wagons farms allies. Congress say victories all too good. Also Congress has gone to lobby this share sometimes 2007 Congress has likely gone to the Senate to lobby the USDA mandatory recall authority. Also the lobby is powerful as Winston-Salem Journal 2007 Congress originally powerful lobby groups survey French consumers these the Congress legislature where lives the nation me lobby like the lobby consumer class saturated. Also me lobby is powerful grand request 2007 labeling law as formal opposed to the power of me lobby which today is outmaneuvered. It's posting on Capitol Hill. Lindsay McCain you have conceded that the GOP will always oppose the CTBT in a world in which Gates is not on board. That means that even if McCain supports the plan, he will not be able to get anyone on the GOP side in favor of the opposition. You also have noticed indicates that McCain is critical to Tasha's appointment. You've also conceded our Campbell letters, which indicates that even if the appointee is massively popular, still requires Obama to push it because, because even if Congress supports him, Obama has to look like he's getting behind the appointees because they're his appointees and he's responsible for any mistakes that they can possibly make. The link, I've already explained why the link direction only goes one way. They have no need to link turn. The link turn doesn't access either of our internal links. It doesn't matter.
I need a.
Did you read the nearly almost 90%?
Yeah.
How much time?
3:30. I'm ready now. The order is topicality, framework, the case, counter plan, the overview on politics, and then the politics. What's that?
When you get set up, could you give me just...
Yeah, it's T, framework, the case, the counter plan, publics overview, and then the politics. Okay. Oh yeah, this one.
You flip the cards to him.
Sure. Yeah.
The fact that gives you one case, Northwestern's after telling they would literally eliminate the huge debate over the topic, literally allow one topical case. This is what our Treacy article was. It would not make sense under his interpretation that he would allow any applicability because you could not cut these minor cases, like the example of other concepts, etc., because those would not be substantial reductions. They would be eliminating small cotton payments, but that would be 90% of total overall payments, which means that we don't think to all is unlimited arguments, which would prove that the fact that we don't have interpretations relevant proof is and more interpretation. Their evidence terribly is when it concedes there's ambiguity regarding the court's term. Our interpretation of and/or will mean that it's exclusive. That is our four argument that we make in the 2EC, which means that the top portion of his evidence can be our interpretation of resolution B's point. The concept of evidence about zoning in Connecticut, and then one court determined that and/or means that zoning should be both. It's from the State Supreme Court of Connecticut, which means it's not a controlling interpretation. What the Supreme Court believes, which means you either default to the ambiguity in the court decision that says it can go both ways, or you depart to our interpretation of community consensus, meaning this argument is not true. Group is arguments that we allow multiple cases. It's not true. This would not be substantial cuts. It would be cuts into all categories, not over parts of the resolution. There would be literally no affirmative links. These arguments group over living. This makes no sense. Living is not good. Ace point we allow middle ground because only our interpretation allows for specific 90% cuts and 10 areas of top, whereas he limits us to one topical affirmative, which means it's not as good of ground. We allow half and maximize net flexibility at the same time. Their interpretation also excludes the affirmative. You can see that it essentially eliminates all F advantage. You can see you should default to F advantage because there's historical bias against the affirmative for the last 2 or 3 years. You also can see that this would create things like PICs, which would destroy it from the fact that if you one top case is very telling on the starting reasonability extend. Reasonability, this is a class example where you should default against the argument. They should goalpost to allow one topical case to make debate impossible for any affirmative that does not meet one topical case interpretation. That's why the topic is changing every year. That's the biggest impact. We don't need when our interpretation exists to have to be reasonable. In this context, they have one case which is not reasonable. Reject the argument now. Framework, they can see the argument here that you should default to education. Our framework is more educational. You can see that that's important. You also can see there's no impact on technicality, which minimizes any obstacle in the other flow. Now, the case debate, they group its arguments about how we don't rewind, etc. You can see that all of our mechanisms, all rocket evidence indicates the plan is broadcast towards the broader media, which means our evidence indicates the way in which we introduce arguments into the moral frame, into the congressional debate would be broadcast, which would create a spillover effect. You can see that we access the citizenry, which would be able to short-circuit the impact here. Just had B's point. Our monkey rich evidence indicates that we slander the government, leads to a reorientation of politics. Your CTBT example says not solve our case because the dissat is a unique scenario for where you can promise with technology. The idea that we should accept the compromise over RW so that we can get a vote over CTBT is the unethical stance that our evidence indicates. We need to question. We should not just say that we should live with nuclear weapons if we allow the fact that they can be virtually tested. We should say that they are bad always. The dissat is a perfect example. This compromise to ask you to counter on this is that we should try to get rid of and short these arguments because they can't access any of our bird rights or evidence as well as all of our specific evidence that you're not a cultural decision maker. They have no evidence in the question of the resolution asked. We have 3 pieces of evidence in the case that you are an agricultural policymaker and they still concede that, which means that you should not take these risks. Our evidence is better. They consequence arguments group and they have no evidence that answers our evidence until we access an extinction impact which has huge consequence or impact to total extinction. Your impact, your dissat is small. It says that a few people will die, but we access a structural interlink to our relationship with people that ways we have conceived your consequence of arguments. I don't think they understand these arguments out of the court's counter plan. They say that no one listens here, but our evidence indicates that the way the debate would happen in Congress is important that people would listen. You say the K-posts are good because that is only key, but our evidence indicates that we have to introduce and interrogate our broader relationship with the way the technology happens by identifying one part of the problem that the counterplan does. It does not allow us to have that relationship. They say the citizenry solves, but this goes the wrong direction. If you involve the citizenry in the wrong direction, you create a failed movement that only focuses on specifics, not our broader relationship between they can access these arguments. They still conceded that they focus on short-term calculus as well, which still links these arguments. They say that it's the same framing, but it's not. Our rocket evidence indicates that how it's justified in broadcast. They say that the net benefit isn't politics. We didn't ask about the net benefits, but the one is the center of its politics. You can't get out of this question now. We're not going for the permutation to the counter plan. No interlink violation means it's not a voting issue. We don't need to win this argument. But also concede that they get agent counter plans will group the Congress to override their evidence to generic state agencies would defer to it. It's proven politically that they would override the court decision. They circulated into court. This is proven across examination. Defer to other politics link evidence that proves they would want to do so. Here's specific evidence that they would overrule ag. Congress would override Brickman 7. Congress would also affect job by the Supreme Court Congress decision. Hamilton 89. The U.S. regulated black judicial review federal law effect determination by the issue not reviewable based on any payment shall be inclusive and shall not be reviewable any other offer of the government. That proves the argument that they would overrule this. The only evidence to why they would overrule an ag policy. Their evidence is just generic, which means that there's no risk to this argument. He said the courts will strike down that overruling, but that's empirically disproven by the fact they happened in the past. And our evidence indicates the USDA will not allow the court to assert themselves, which is proof that they would get around them. Now we're not going for conditionality. Links to politics consider Calabrese evidence. The step states this that even if it shields, according to your evidence, our evidence post-states and said that Obama will want to make a statement about his views on the decision. The Republicans use this to paint him as a flip-flop and attack him politically. The plan is a flip-flop. This is empirically true. Goes political capital. The handgun decision proves Snyder and 86 Supreme Court decision overturning handgun back up with Obama decision be sparked political wildfire. Opposition to Obama. Where the detention case proves Lincoln's name. Reactive decisions Supreme Court, who will reaffirm due prosecutor King and Bisley and Blue Green or on the slam Obama, thwarting the decision from Obama, is that he's wrong as a plot court decision. Only we have evidence to assume what Obama would do as a result of counterclaim. They would go on to this policy. Group the impact, their impact is small. It's substantive our impact arguments. They reject what technology we reject developed. Structural nature of our entire relationship with technology is outweighs when it's testing. I explain how the camera of the dissent is the perfect instance of the compromise between RW as well as CTBT. You should reject this as political blackmail. We're not going for permutation, no internally violation, inside voting issue won't pass now. Takes out the gatekeeper warrant because he cannot influence all those people. For instance, there's 10 that are key. Their evidence also doesn't say that Tauscher is a key concession to get Gates. They have no evidence that Obama is even putting his political capital on Leonard Tosher. You cannot let a politics debate if you have no evidence that Obama is putting capital on this issue. Rove is irrelevant. He literally destroyed the GOP party. Except that he doesn't have capital evidence. Their evidence takes out dissent, despite other things you overcome. Our evidence indicates there's huge fights and more evidence. Stimulus fight. Bloomberg 3.7 Ross Obama Tanner put form the House and Senate MP panels start proving what's like the beast comes from their priorities. It takes all capital part to be the post registering with regulation. Will take all Obama's political capital pushed through reforms will press another sort of protest. Obama's company they make big turns key to family farmers circle around this role. Their evidence Canadians or broader term link that term link turns your lobby arguments. Because argument says that they're literally 90% of the entire coalition turns this in.
642.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's ASCS? It says USDA regularly uses to block or limit judicial review of ASCS decisions.
I'm not sure what it's referencing.
You're going, I
No, if you don't know.
Okay. I can look at the card. Maybe it's.
Give it a record. All right.
Is there a chance we could get after our pick?
Yeah.
Those of you don't need.
Case, counterplan, politics. Ready?
First, I can see that there's technology internationally. He's made no spillover argument. He's evidence over since U.S. Secondly, second one, these are tried for the from the 8th one. They see you are here in practice empirical tonight. We've had this relationship with technology. Technology developed for a long time has not caused extinction beats when you have no specific scenario. How is it exactly going to lead to extinction? We have the only specific scenario has a lot of people, but I see something extinct testing terms case because it's the attempt to deploy technology for something beyond the issue of sustainability. Now I'm going to answer a couple case arguments that might even try to later on. They say we'll take out the disadvantage when they're already indicted. This have to have a specific example of how it exactly is going to affect the when we deploy new deployment. Second of all, we have already tested in the past. We're probably test now. They have made no other argument against this. They say that you have to about this agricultural policy maker. First, I don't know if this is a framework, but even if you're an agricultural policymaker, you could still make a determination that you would rather take your case to the Supreme Court. Second of all, is the donations are commissionados. Even if you're in the ag sector, that does not mean that you should be biased in favor of ag. That means you should still right, all lives is equal. Furthermore, their extinction claims are undermined by their own thing about impact capitalism. The fact that there has been death with because of our relationship with technology right now has not been extinction based. The types of impacts that have already happened because of this relationship have been minor in nature. That means you should prefer arguments that are empirical improvements such as the way the genetic damage and people have died in the instance of nuclear testing. Counterpoint. Their terminal impact is about our relationship with technology in general. Their solvency mechanism is contingent upon the spillover effect of the plan. The way the plan is defended in the public. The capital is not 100% the case first. In process, even said the CAFOs are unique instance when this technology is employed for a purpose of being sustainability. Proof that if we get rid of CAFOs, we can be able to change the public's relation to technology too. It doesn't matter how and as much how we frame it here. It matters how the politics frame it in the world of implementation. The public won't be affected by what is said in Austin, Texas. They would hear about the Supreme Court justice defended in Washington, D.C. We won't defend the Supreme Court will justify the decision. The same way Congress will justify the legislation in the world of the plan. Even if our capital text doesn't say it, obviously the court will say more than the one-line text in the cabinet. The same applies to the plan. It doesn't explicitly say that Congress will adopt the justifications of the one. Seeing the role to the cabinet, the court made clear that technology would only be used in the intention of sustainability. This was hashed on cross-examination 4. We are winning that agencies would not distribute the subsidies of the capitalists in the entire world would perceive the cabinet. That's what Michelle understood that. Even if Congress had to certify the capital, the new piece of legislation would be struck down. And 5 years no evidence indicating that Congress is critical. The first time it makes Congress the key. This is already answered above. They say we have to get a relation nature. Once again, it's already answered above. They say it's about a fate to move with the capital to be able to solve this. Or Michelle, the evidence in the case that the Supreme Court represents broader policy, short-term exclusions. At first, I don't know how this compromises solves. They have no specific examples of how it's going to affect the way the citizens view the instance of the win. Second of all, doesn't answer our testing impact. Say how justified matters. That's fine. We will justify the same way you do. They say avoiding politics links. Once again, this is not even explain well the one should not let any arguments to the future. Now they say circumvention. A couple of concede their arguments first. All are Herman evidence indicating that they would strike any attempt at circumvention. Post-states the government circumventing the Bolo decision with the Agricultural Adjustment Act. That happened in the 1970s. Our evidence indicates that now the court is far more stringent. Second of all, we went that the agencies will not distribute the funds. It doesn't matter if Congress has a circumvented because our prolific evidence formed with our previously evidence indicates that the agencies will unconditionally listen to the Supreme Court. They say our evidence far too generic. Our evidence indicates that all agencies born on would want to follow. He reads a new piece of evidence. A couple problems. First, the underlined evidence indicates that the instance of the ASCs. I don't really know what the hell this acronym means, but I am pretty sure it doesn't talk about the CAFO. Second of all, this evidence is from 1989. And third, it assumes agency decision making on factual claims. Here is evidence for a distinction. This assumes a substantive decision, not a procedural decision. Emory 96. The means is action versus mechanism. The Supreme Court conclude that any piece of essentially procedural, the substantive piece action versus mechanism does not make a particular result specifically for example, notice across any across all various states and implement the NDT's provisions to the full extent possible to be found and without agency duty to comply without discretion by maintaining agencies was under a specific statutory obligation. They say the people dispute about advantage as well. Now they say the capital links of the dissent, however, they concede some piece of evidence. O'Brien evidence indicates that Obama, if he wants to distance himself, can be able to do it, use the course of political lightning. Or Simon's evidence indicates that this is uniquely how they avoid getting political and their evidence assumes a world of flip-flopping. From the politics is true proof that Obama would not want to come out in support of the capital text because he would rather try to push Townsend's nomination first, or we have the only evidence indicating what he's trying to change. He reads two new pieces of evidence. First, this evidence assumes gun control, and the second one assumes detention. This evidence assumes that things like Obama tried to flash out to you. Does not even indicate that Obama would lose political capital, just that there would be some minor type of controversy because Obama might want to disagree with the decision. None of it is as conclusive. Furthermore, we will probably win that the capital solves the entirety of the case, given that they've conceded that the framing of the capital is the exact same as the framing of the plan, which means we'll have to bring to mind the politics. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. They've also conceded our jobs evidence, which is the reason why the capital doesn't solve because people would overproduce because they don't think that the plan doesn't solve because they would not view it as permanent. They consider McFarland evidence that the capital is viewed as permanent, which means capos would still exist in the world of the plan, but not in the counter plan. They have no perm, so they're probably screwed. Politics. The dissent investigation concedes a moral obligation. That's what one is the impact claim of. Is impacted as a brain issue. Allowing to read this new piece about this Chaco. Oh, 3 also put us off to develop neutron bombs and neutron radiations capable of inducing global heat, relationship, global connectivity, and the entire planet will be demolished. If he wants to say that these types of if he wants to make an indictment and extend it to the chair, you should read our evidence. If not, they should be able to go against what is the impact that they concede that as for the legitimacy. Second, they have to see the short-term, long-term distinction. The extinction has not already happened because of relation to technology, hence their own impact framing would presuppose to allow them the ability to develop these extinction clubs. Furthermore, the counterplan compromise most of these terms. They say Gates would not influence you concede that all this evidence indicating that Obama's pushing our cable evidence indicates that even if the candidate is universally popular, you would have to stand back from them because it's Obama's candidate in general. Second of all, our evidence indicates that you need to get Townsend nominated because that's the only way to link the RRW to the CTB, which is key to get Gates on board. You have no evidence of this. They said Obama's investing capital, cable evidence indicates that he has to, and you did not make the start of the Jewish teacher starting nothing flow. They said you draw something right now to exceed our road evidence indicating the road evidence indicating is just enough capital, or Nowicki evidence, or state evidence, along with our Feldman evidence. They also concede our evidence indicating the pollsters agree that he has a sufficient amount of capital, and gets sufficient amount of capital right now. And his evidence does not indicate that capital is even bottomed out, just indicates sort of fights. Our new agrarian evidence is on fire, indicating that he might be spending capital in other places, but he's already rationed out his capital to make sure that he can cover his entire agenda. Our new agrarian evidence even indicates that this does not have room for agriculture. He tries to extend his link, turn out over this is to oblivion. Our new agrarian evidence is far better than this, and he's considered our meat lobby link shows that they control the Congress, and he's considered the capital's finance. That's our Thompson evidence. Yeah, circle the wagon. The entire farm lobby would backlash because they would view them coming next. Seems like an easy decision to me.
Can I get the agency's will enforcing counterclaims?
230.
I have the Pierce evidence. Can I get the overproduction article? What?
I need 2AC one hour reception.
Okay. I need this.
You already checked those one hour.
And I also need the Chip and Tracy.
Yeah.
I also need both the impacts to CCP.
Chip, did I already give you the choice to use politics?
Yeah, that's the only thing I have. Yeah, that's right.
We might have given it back because I'm not seeing it here.
Okay.
Just like part of this is that Obama would get the blame.
counterplan and dised, and I'll have some overviewers on the top of dised. Alright. Everyone ready?
Underdeveloped analytics can take out the entire weight of our 1AC solvency evidence and contention. They have considered a derailment internally to solvency, that we would have the government slander itself over the issue of agricultural subsidies and over the issue of how we justify our relationship with technology and the status quo. They've conceded that this would be broadcasted as per our Rockridge evidence. They've conceded the evidence in our Atkinson evidence that this would lead to a broader social and cultural change that could spill over massively and rapidly. These are pieces of evidence that they haven't come to terms with. They have claimed without warranted assertions. They say technology exists internationally. Of course it does. The plan would solve this just as well as the counterplan, when in fact the plan would solve better because of the dramatic change our Atkinson evidence is talking about. If we went into risk of a solvency deficit of the counterplan, that means it wouldn't solve. They say our impact is empirically denied. There isn't a scenario. Our impact is not empirically denied. As a matter of fact, it says it's progressing to the status quo. Environmental degradation is created. Atkinson says the next few decades are key. Also answers the scenario by giving a scenario that there will be a steady collapse of resources and resources leading to chaos and eventually extinction. They say it won't take out the impact of the disadvantage. No, it doesn't take out the impact of the disadvantage. It proves the disadvantage is a subset, and the affirmative would solve that impact by changing the relationship between technology and nature. They say prefer empirically proven impacts. They don't have any empirically proven impacts in the debate, which means we win the court's counterplan. There are two specific solvency deficits that will win here. The first is the framing disadvantage. They justify policy via political capital and avoidance. They have conceded that the DA is the ultimate form of compromise because it says we would justify based on RRW, which is a use of military technology as opposed to environmental technology, which means that they're the exact sort of compromise our accident evidence and avoidance our accident evidence says to get rid of, which is a massive disadvantage to this. Our interpretation of the debate, the entire debate, has been that the way you justify policy is the way they will be politically debated, which means their justification for policy isn't environmental policy. They never give an environmental reason to do the counterplan. The only reason to do the counterplan is that it avoids the political capital disadvantage, which obviously links to our framing argument. They also haven't come to terms with the nuance of another particular framing argument, that the court cannot possibly use the same frame due to the way that they have written their counterplan text. They say they will rule CAFO subsidies unconstitutional. You can't justify a ruling on constitutional grounds on environmental grounds because there's nothing about the environment in the damn Constitution, which means they have already stated their justification as of the UNT counterplan text. We make this argument, hold them to it. Even if we don't win that particular solvency deficit, we will win. The courts will be overridden solvency deficit. Our Brakeman evidence is spectacular. It says Congress's realm is sometimes challenged by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court eventually overrules and supersedes and comes around the other side of that policy. For example, Congress could provide tax credits to CAFO producers even if it didn't provide subsidies, etc. Which, if their politics links are true, that proves that there will be circumvention. Our Hamilton evidence says that the USDA will regularly circumvent their agencies. Link evidence is not specific. We have the only evidence about foreign policy. We, as a matter of fact, have two cards about foreign policy. It's also empirically proven. They cite a number of decisions where the Supreme Court overturned some sort of congressional action, but still subsidies exist, and still subsidies continue to exist in a form larger than they ever have previously, which means the declaration they use is the statutory law, i.e. their claim that it would be unconstitutional, whatever case they justify that based on, is a reason that case has been overruled and taken out by Congress. They say agencies will listen. It doesn't assume the fact that agencies are subservient to Congress. It actually says that in the evidence. It actually says that in the evidence. They're substantial, not procedural arguments. Don't matter. They're only a procedural claim in the first place because they only claim to get rid of it for CAFOs. Now the link to politics debate, they're getting crushed on this instance. Their O'Brien evidence is generic and from the year 2000. They have no evidence saying Obama wouldn't comment on the counterplan. Calabrese evidence says that Obama has been commenting on every Supreme Court decision that comes in front of him, which means he would still draw the same political implications of the plan if he would say anything about it, because they have proven on the links and link terms of the politics debate that the plan is a contentious issue. Given their brink arguments, this would be enough to trigger the link. It's empirically proven by both the handgun decision and the detention case, and it is empirically proven that the GOP will use these as reasons to slander Obama, which means the counterplan links in very large part to the disadvantage. Now, the politics DIR impact is extinction because of a bad ethical relationship between technology and the environment. This extinction is inevitable, and this is the biggest impact because because it describes the frame through which we justify all of our environmental policies, including nuclear testing, which means their impact is at best a subset of ours. That means that any solvency deficit of the counter plan, even a minor solvency deficit, is a reason to vote affirmative, even if we spot them in full risk of the disadvantage. It doesn't matter because that sort of impact is inevitable. Now, the politics debate itself, they don't get their fucking neutron bombs impact. The 1AR and 2AC are premise of the 1AR and 2AC are premise of the impact level of the disadvantage, which is the most important level to our decision of what case arguments to make and what arguments to extend. Our entire strategic justification is screwed by allowing new arguments in the 2NR. Also destroys depth of debate, which means the only impact they have is this genetics impact, which is never quantified at any point in the debate. What is this impact? We have an obligation to future generations. We can see that those obligations don't matter, and you should evaluate consequences. Our only claim about consequences is that you should look to environmental consequences first, which means they literally have no impact to this disadvantage. Now, they are in big trouble on this disadvantage for another reason. If they win, the counterplan solves entirely, and even if they win, there is an impact to this disadvantage. We are probably turning the disadvantage because there will be a fight coming to the status quo. They say there's sufficient capital in the status quo. The budget thumpers, Chip Reeves and the 1AR, take this out by saying that Obama will bring his budget in next week, and our evidence says that will literally drain all of his political capital, which should be sufficient to create, which should be considered sufficient to create a trade-off. It's also predicted, so even if he's rationing capital now, the evidence says the fight will be bigger than he's rationed for, which means the link is most likely inevitable. Now, the link turn debate, they screw this up. They make this meat lobby and circle the wagons argument. They have but we've got an eternal link turn to these arguments by saying the key part of the meat lobby and the key part of the farm lobby is family farmers who don't like EKIP subsidies to cake votes, which means they would circle the wagons in favor of the plan. They would circle the wagons in favor of subsidies to smaller farmers as opposed to larger farmers. That's noble evidence for the 1AC. That's the rule evidence. They have conceded our evidence says that this is the most important internal link to the farm land, which means we restore political capital.
Hey, to make this easier, Blake, I'm going to go sit up with Todd just because of evidence and whatnot. Do you want to come over too?
Oh, yeah.
Dobbs evidence, all your circumvention evidence, basically all the counterpoint solvency evidence, and then all the politics. Does it link as well?